The following is an Operation Podcast production.
If they want to all of a sudden tomorrow, let's say be an entrepreneur, instead of, talking about it and posting on social media about it, there are 3% of the individuals will go pick up a book, go do some research on what book to read, and will actually go read about it, take notes, figure it out, and then start a process. 97% of the population will buy the book and never open it. They'll read it or never execute one of the steps without being told to do so. There's a larger underlying problem here that this is kind of exposing, which is the lack of mentorship and the lack of positive male role models that exist in our normal day in and day out life as we grew up. And that, I believe, is very clear. There's tons of data to support that. It goes back to the early 60s. Hey guys, this is Dustin Baker. I am president of BioProPlus. And if you're ready for a good hour of everything dude and man that I completely didn't expect to talk about, you're in for a real treat. So welcome to Ever Forward Radio.
I want to start this episode by just really kind of partly getting inside my head and my story, because I feel like I'm not alone. And I feel like there are a lot of other guys. And I think specifically this episode, we're going to be addressing a lot of the guys out there. But, I certainly think a lot of the slippery slopes of motivation and results and training and sleep and body composition definitely carries over into, anybody and everybody. But I'll just speak to my story. As a guy that's been training, living an active lifestyle damn near his entire life, and I'm 38 years old, I'm going to be 39 this year. Playing sports in high school, active duty Army for 6 years, studying exercise science in college, working in the health and fitness industry for years. Ever Forward Radio at its core is a health, fitness, wellness show. And so taking care of your body through nutrition, training, sleep, all of these things are incredibly important to me and incredibly important to my audience. And a couple years ago, right around 36, I began to notice that the same the same things weren't giving me the same results. What I was doing wasn't yielding me the strength that I had come to know and love. The body composition was just staying harder to maintain in terms of muscle mass to fat, and more specifically, motivation. I was having to really talk myself up more to go work out, to go train, to take a walk even. And this has been a part of my life for many, many, many years. And I know that I'm not alone. And I've tried a lot of things. I've tried to dig deep and research other ways to motivate myself. My audience knows my testosterone replacement therapy journey. I did about 15 months, late 2022 through most of 2023. And I've been off TRT and Clomid and anything and everything entirely for over a year now exactly. And so when I found other things that were promising similar results, of course I was skeptical. And what I want to get into later on in the conversation with what you all do over at BioPro is just that, should we choose to kind of go the supplement route. But please, I guess first and foremost, remind me that I'm not alone. And the guy listening is not alone, that the struggle is real. Maybe it's after that 30-year-old benchmark, or after an injury, or after kids, or after just your career takes over. The same things that you've known to come and love to do about your body just don't really give you the same results, and you get a little detached. Tell me I'm not alone, man, and walk us through maybe other guys' stories like that.
Yeah, well, you're not. I'm 38 as well. I'll be 39 at some point this year. I don't know when you're turning 39.
October.
Oh, dude, at least it's before me. I'm November, so you'll be there before I will. But you're not alone, and I would say, I didn't actually know that about your prior service, and I will say that we do a lot of work with guys that are veterans and ex-military or still in service, and it seems to happen a little bit to them earlier. And there's some reasons and some personal opinions, medically backed, of why I think that is, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. But this is a normal part of life, which is you're just describing a hormonal decline. It's no one can escape it. It happens to everybody. It doesn't matter how hard you train or how much, how well you eat, or, how much you sleep. Those things all can contribute to maybe delaying the onset of what is you're describing, which is hormonal decline, but it's going to happen to everybody. So you're not alone. I'm no different. You're no different. Whatever guys listen on the phone, on the, radio is no different. So take that for what it's worth.
All right, good. And I felt like I kind of had cheated my 30s a little bit. Living an active lifestyle, taking care of my body, sleep, I kind of abide by that 80-20 rule. And I think a lot of my audience does as well. I felt like once I hit 36, my 30s finally caught up with me. Everyone told me that once you hit 30, it's like, oh man, good luck getting the same results. Good luck keeping strength. Good luck getting to the gym the same amount of times that you used to. And I always kind of took it a little bit of as a badge of honor that 30 came and I was fine. 31, 32, 33. And I think there is a lot of promise to be had for anyone really that is going to stay committed. And it just goes to show you how rewarding foundational principles and habits can be, because those are they're not as easy let goable of. Now, someone in your 30s trying to create all these new habits, of course, you're going to have a little bit of that startup trouble and adherence, maybe. But I really felt like I cheated my 30s, and I didn't feel like I was 30, or I didn't struggle with any of these typical male hormonal response, motivation, training issues until I was 36. And so that's good to hear that I'm not alone, first and foremost. But why do you think that it is? Why do you think that guys, once we cross that 30-year-old age, that things just stop working as well as they used to? Or are we just bombarded with this propaganda or just common knowledge that, hey, yeah, good luck after 30?
So I think there's two different answers to that question. One is a personal opinion, and that is based around lifestyle factors that add to everything you just spoke about. And the second would be a scientific opinion, because they both coincide with each other, but one is based upon, like I just said, one based upon outside lifestyle factors and where you're at in your 30s and different things that are impacting your life, whether that's family, children, career, et cetera, because people do things at different times, which add to your body's natural processes, right? So if you start having kids, I don't know if you have any children, but the second, you start having kids, your sleep will magically go down, and your sleep will change because you have an infant and you're up in the middle of the night, depending upon what your childcare situation is, which is going to directly impact how your body secretes its natural hormones. So that is an outside lifestyle factor. But when it comes to the science, the rate at which hormones decrease is about 1% to 2%. We focus in what we do for a living on growth hormone, but whether it's testosterone or growth hormone, I mean, the decline is about 1% to 2% per year. Sometimes in extreme cases, you're looking at a 50% decline by the age of 35, which is typically why you see a 35 to realistically, when we talk avatars of who we deal with and who we talk to and what our physicians, the age ranges of their patients are, 44 seems to be like the number where like everything clicks and you wake up 40 or 44 years old, you look in the mirror, you don't look like you used to, you don't feel like you used to, you don't have exactly
everything clicks in a bad way. Everything clicks
in a bad way. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. like maybe literal clicking.
Actually. So there's a physician here in town that we work with that has a really great analogy, and that is hormonal decline is like a paper cut every day, every hour, whatever, after you finish puberty. And so you might not notice it a whole lot going through your late 20s or even into your early 30s. But by the time you get to your late 30s, early 40s, sometimes if you're lucky, maybe mid 40s or later, you're covered in paper cuts and you're at massive, blood loss. So you start to feel it a whole lot more, because then it starts to snowball and compound. So that's typically what people are feeling. So to answer your question, you have lifestyle factors that could speed up this process, especially if you're in, when we deal with active duty or military veterans that have been living a life for years of extreme elevated stress levels or cortisol levels, which is another hormone that impacts how your body secretes other hormones like testosterone or growth hormone. That's going to kind of speed up that process. If you have, children quite young and you're stretched to your limits and you have, again, a higher stress level over longer periods of time, that's going to accelerate that process as well. So if you don't have those things, you could potentially, everybody's physiology is different, but you could potentially maybe last a little bit longer until you start really feeling and seeing those declines.
I feel like, kind of picking up on your mention again of, how y'all work with active duty and veterans. That is a big part of my story, and a lot of my audience, are military veterans as well. And I feel like especially anyone that goes in at a fairly young age, like I did, I enlisted technically I was 17 and I was active duty 17 to 24. And I think there's something to be said that you don't realize during that period is that the level of stress, physical, mental, emotional, that you are choosing to go into for years on end in many cases is kind of like a blessing in disguise, I think, because I'll say this, once I got out, the level of perception I had to everyday, quote, stressors was significantly less than a lot of my peers to the left and right of me. And what I mean by that is I would not get stressed out unless shit literally hit the fan. Little things here and there in daily life and in school and relationships and family matters. It took a lot more for me to really kind of feel that stress. Now, I wonder if there's a way for other people to kind of, shout out Greg Anderson, a mutual friend of ours, to really microdose adversity, to really microdose these stressors so that maybe it's not this snowball effect that just hits the shit out of you later on and really you take a toll in your 30s. What would you maybe recommend to the guys in their early 20s, mid 20s to choose to kind of face these small stressors more and more? So hopefully you're kind of doing your future hormone self a favor, aside of maybe joining the police department or first responder or military or something like that.
That is a question I've never been asked before.
That's what I like to hear on Everford Radio, man. That's what I like to hear.
That is a question I've never been asked before. I've never thought about, like, I know I know Greg saying very well of microdose adversity, and I don't disagree with it. You really caught me on this one. I think that if somebody has very little experience with adversity, number one, I would say you're a very lucky individual because a lot of people pray for that because they've had, very tough lives or
that could be subjective. Sorry to cut you off. I feel like that could be subjective, do you really want to go through life and not have these adversities and not be challenged and not be poked and prodded to see what you're capable of or learn from these lessons, or do you want to be able to figure shit out more on the go? I mean, I don't know. There's no disagreement here. It's just kind of
I hear you. I hear you. I had I say that because, and I don't just kind of jump out the gate with these types of stories. My life was was very interesting from a young age where, we had, not exactly the most positive things growing up that happened. So when I think about it, I wouldn't want someone to have to go through a lot of the things that I went through as a child, even through my, early 20s that were pretty not cool. I will say that I wouldn't change anything just because, to your point exactly, if I changed anything or got to go back and not experience type of stuff, could I be where I'm at right now? And the answer would be, who knows? The answer is probably no. And I wouldn't want that. I really enjoy my life and what we're doing and all the things that I've been very grateful and fortunate to have. When we're talking about individuals and putting themselves into those positions, I think if you don't have anything, and you're looking for that, I think it could be a very positive experience. I would say first and foremost, anytime you're going to experience something that's going to put your body in a higher stress zone, I think you have to be very specific about what the goal of doing that to yourself is going to be, right? Going into some of these things without a purpose and a goal isn't exactly the most constructive. And the reason why I say that is because for a very long time, other than the adversity that was not by choice in my life, when I chose to do certain things, whether that was to be or to start on let's just say a fitness journey, right? Like I had never worked out pretty much a day in my life until I was probably like 24, 25 years old, right? But then it very quickly became almost the basis of my entire life and started an entire career that led me all over the place and got to do really cool stuff and go to different places very quickly. So, what I was getting at is there has to be a purpose and a goal of what you're trying to achieve, especially if you're going to be forcing yourself to do those things. If it's just to experience pain and some level of psychological or physical suffering, I would say the goal would have to match what you're trying to do with that. But if you have nothing that's pushing you, I would identify what the purpose is and what the goal you're trying to achieve is, and then select what type of mental and physical suffering you're willing to or wanting to put yourself through to achieve that. I think some of the programs that are coming out these days are a little over the top, and I think that they're not as constructive as some people might think that they are.
What do you mean exactly? What are you referring to there?
There are, I mean, I'm not as big of a social media guy as I once was, but there's a lot of men's programs out there that
I had a feeling you were going to bring this up. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of men's programs out there that are starting to show up that I think I think similar goals could be achieved in a less, in more of a constructive way that could lead to long-term success of what that individual is signing up for. And I know I'm not trying to be too cryptic, but I'm also not trying to, get any weird emails later. But there are men's programs that, and I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think now is that replicate and or simulate some sort of military style training that berate human beings as a way to, like, I guess, harden them and toughen them. And I don't think that is going to harden and toughen anybody, because it's not attacking, and it's not identifying why that individual feels like they need that in the first place. You're just screaming in somebody's face and dragging them through mud. But why does the individual need to go through that, or pay for what do they feel the need is to pay for something like that? And it's not inexpensive. I mean, I think they start at like $8,000 and they go up to 30. So I think there's some that go closer, way higher than that. So what is the intent and the purpose that the individual paying for this is trying to achieve, which is what I'm getting at, which is the purpose and the goal. Because putting yourself through some random stranger you met on the internet to yell and scream in your face and drag you through the mud is probably actually not the best way to achieve that.
Man, I'm really glad you brought this up, because this is something that I've seen, in my opinion, run rampant on social media and in a lot of even circles and circles of circles that I find myself in here in the podcast space, in the health and fitness, wellness, personal development space. And now look, I agree. I'm not here to knock anybody. I'm not here to hopefully get a bunch of angry emails later on, but I do have to scratch my head and kind of go, hold up. When I see a lot of these, and it's kind of this model of, and none in particular really, but just this model of, hey, I'm a man and I've achieved some level of success, a higher level of success, typically financially, in running my own business or even working in corporate America. And so therefore, I think other men really look to my level of success and want to emulate it, and they want to maybe be me or be a form of me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them feel challenged. And I'm going to really make them, really want to walk away feeling like more of a man. And I'm going to integrate and use my money and successes to hire military members or to hire these rough and tough guys and to bring in maybe they're actual friends. But I feel like it is really just this true kind of pay to play thing to make a lot of guys question, what kind of man am I? And feel like participating in something like that is automatically over a weekend gonna turn me into a man and give me all the adversity that I need to rise to the top and to have this level of success. Or even just at its most fundamental core, I think what most guys are looking for in that situation is camaraderie, is brotherhood, is this sense of feeling that we were questioning something. It might literally be kind of other end of the spectrum here, your self-worth, your value. It might be, what am I capable of physically, mentally? It might be just a personal test. But at the end of it, yeah, for the guys that finish, you get that sense of pride. There's no knocking that. Maybe you also make some great new friends. You get that camaraderie. But why? If you're just spending money to just to go through that, to your point, without that specific intention and reason going in, what really is your outcome? And I unfortunately see a lot of guys go through programs like this, and I look at them a month later, 6 months later, a year down the road, and personally, I don't feel like there is long-term adherence or long-term value or long-term implications for what they hoped to have gotten out of that week long or even just weekend long experience. And I've turned down quite a few ones that have approached me about joining, and it always works well for me because I just tell them, no, I did that for real. Like,
yeah, I did it for real. Sorry,
I did that for real.
Yeah.
I was active duty 6 years. I'm good. I'm fine. And that there's really no coming back from that. But I will say that, unfortunately, I think a lot of guys are looking for that. And so Dustin, I want to ask you, since you have kind of a different opinion than maybe a lot of these other programs, not me. Why, as men, do you think by us volunteering with a bunch of other guys to go through physical, mental, emotional pain and torture, do we think that is going to change our life? Why is that going to give us this edge or help us get the secret in business?
Because you don't know any better. So, and as you were speaking, I was thinking of like what gets us into this position, just as we'll just say men in general. And I believe the reason why people are willing to go and do these things and why these things are even, and I don't know level of success. I don't know I don't know the numbers that they do. I don't know how successful that they are. You can just, social media is what it is. It's a highlight reel. It's just top level stuff. Nobody really knows what's going on. But let's just say that there's more of them growing. So somebody's, some of they are multiplying. So something's happening there. And I think it's, I believe that there's a larger underlying problem here that this is kind of exposing, which is the lack of mentorship and the lack of, positive male role models that exist just and I'm speaking for the United States. I can't speak for overseas. I didn't grow up overseas. I grew up in the United States. So, and things are different culturally, but we lack by and large, and I'm not saying everybody, this is a generalization, but we lack positive male role models in our normal day in and day out life as we grew up. And that, I believe is very clear. There's tons of data to support that. It goes back to the early 60s, especially 1962. You can start seeing a lot you can start seeing the degradation of the family unit, and along with that, you see lower SAT scores, you see lower testing scores, you see higher high school dropout rates, you see higher. It all can be tracked back to 1962. You can see it higher crimes, violent crime like rape and literal violent physical crime. A lot of those things can all be traced back to that. And it coincides perfectly with the degradation of the family unit here in the United States. And with that, you have less positive male role models like father figures, et cetera. And so you have a generation of men that have grown up without those things that are missing key parts of their psyche that maybe we would have gotten generations ago. And they're reaching out and they're grabbing for some level of purpose outside of clocking in and clocking out for whoever their employer might be. And that leads them to look to external sources that are providing those, what might feel like something to fill that gap, because we spend all of our days on our phones and on computer screens. I'm doing it right now, talking to you, being forced to be in person and physical experiences and participating in different things. Those are going away more and more every day. And the only interaction we have is for people on the internet. So those are the people that are the voices are the loudest. So you have groups like this that are able to be successful because, as bad as it sounds, a guy might have had his father around and he's looking for someone to give him purpose. That mentorship is like a non-existent thing. I wouldn't say non-existent, but it's, if you can find a really good mentor. Now that I'm actually saying this, I'm like one of the luckiest guys I can think of, because I didn't have a bunch of male role models when I was growing up, at least not positive ones. But I had a lot of really good business mentors and mentors in that respect. When I started my career, or a little bit into that, which I've been very lucky. And I can only really, if you want to call whatever I have success, I can really tie it all back to having really good mentorship. And I'll continue and then I'll shut up. But I think the differences of what I did that was very different, as opposed to going on the internet and seeking for these things, is I would go as a physical human being, my mom just taught me very different. If you want something, just show up until they give it to you. And so I physically would show up to places and give it to when I give it to you. So my entire career started that way too. I couldn't afford a gym membership, and I went to the owner who I'd never spoken to hardly maybe twice and said, "Hey, I can't pay you. I'll take out your garbage and I'll clean your barbells and clean your toilets, but I just don't,
Yeah.
don't take my gym membership." And everything started from there. So it's a human interaction instead of a electronic one.
That last part of your story, I think, maybe this is just my kind of portion of the world that I see in real life and online, but I feel like that level of commitment of just showing up and doing the undesirable work, of doing the unsexy work, so that in hopes of you do get what you want, this willingness to give sweat equity to things in the presence, especially of other positive role models. And we'll just keep the theme of male role models going here for other males. I see that kind of not as robust as, I can't believe I'm going to say this, as it was back in my day. We're the same age, man. And I feel like at 38, I can't believe that I'm already saying, man, the kids these days, they just don't want it as bad, or maybe they do want it as bad, but they're not willing to give as much work as maybe we were. And so it kind of poses this age-old question of, is that just the way that it is every generation? We only see the change. We only see what's not present in the new generation compared to ours. But I do have to say, I think collectively, men these days, whether that's by nature or nurture, are not committing as much to the work as they might be committing to this end result that they want. Why do you think that is, and how can we, if at all, influence that?
So I've had that discussion before with individuals regarding, is it different for each generation? I think that the data is clear. It's about 3% of the population that is able to work autonomously, meaning they have 3% of the population is capable of being basically, I want to say this the right way, but self-starting go-getters, if you will. That is a psychological, and I can't quote the study specifically, but I've read that repeatedly. But anyway,
driven by more intrinsic motivation, just naturally.
So
more
they're able to,
motivation.
correct, and they're able to do things autonomously. So they don't necessarily have to be told to do something. They, if they want to go. If they want to all of a sudden tomorrow, let's say, be an entrepreneur, instead of talking about it and posting on social media about it, there are 3% of the individuals will go pick up a book, go do some research on what book to read, and will actually go read about it, take notes, figure it out, and then start a process. 97% of the population will buy the book and never open it, and then they'll read it or never execute one of the steps without being told to do so. That's just a psychological fact. So I can't assume that it would be the same, or different from our generation to not. Now, those numbers can change. I've never read anything different. I think that in the past, people were just physically forced to have to do certain things because there was no other way to provide for your family or eat. So the
survival is one hell of a motivator. That's for damn sure.
And we have not even a fraction of what is forced past generations to survive than we have today. Today is the easiest time in life to ever, you just got to wake up, and a lot of people don't even, and this isn't a bad thing necessarily, because I'm doing this as we speak right now, right? You were like, hey, when you coming out to LA next? I'm like, I'm not. So we're able to connect this way. So I'm not saying that this is bad, but a lot of people don't even have to drive to the office anymore, for better or for worse, whatever that is. So things move a lot faster. They're a lot easier, which I think the start of the conversation was, why do you think that is with generations, or what? It's a lack of and this is something I was taught. I had to unlearn the opposite of this, which is we lack the art of delayed gratification.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. I mean, I thought I had a mom that, when I was probably when I played baseball, 5 years old, we we were not a family of wealthy means. I was raised by, my mom basically took on the male role and worked all day, and my grandmother raised us. Okay. And when I was very young, so anyway, I had used baseball cleats, and that's not fun. Like, you want new baseball cleats, but my mother would tell me, and I remember that I can still see them today in my head. They were navy blue. They had like the leather fringe over the top of the laces. Anyway, she told me they were magic cleats and that I could run faster than the other kids with new cleats. And I believed her. And why I tell that story is because I think back to that moment, and I think I've taken that exact same mental approach in almost everything that I've done. And what I call that is willfully dumb and numb, meaning I'm dumb enough to think I can't fail, even though I do all the time. I can tell you about multiple different business ventures that I failed at, spectacularly, but I don't ever think about them. I just think that they are like these little stepping stones of, oh, that happened for this reason, and I learned how to do this now, and now it's done X, Y, and Z for me. So, but the delayed gratification of putting in, understanding that the work must be put in and you have to actually build something before it functions, instead of just getting a functioning, something that already functions already, and then just getting to reap the rewards or benefits from it, doesn't exist any longer. Or maybe it never has. I can't speak to that, but that is something that people completely miss out on and lack. And if they would just subscribe to it for even a short amount of time, you'd be surprised how fast things work when you just kind of put your nose down. But my point of the story was to say that, I didn't have delayed gratification. I wanted things now, et cetera. And I always was dumb enough to think that no matter what happened, I could achieve whatever I was trying to do. And when I had a great mentor who's now a business partner of mine in one of our ventures, but he's who taught me that. And I believe that's why, one of the main core reasons of why this business has been so wildly successful as compared to some of the prior ones that I've been involved in that have been less than successful.
I want to say something before I ask you a question around failure, actually. Sure. I feel like as you're kind of describing that, I kind of got this idea of, I personally think where we are right now in the sense and in the world of masculinity is, should we choose to look at it this way, we're kind of in the Goldilocks era of masculinity. And here's why I think that way. Our grandparents' generation, I don't know about you, my grandfather, he was a World War II veteran. And so, I mean, dare I even say maybe even into World War I, quote, the greatest generation, these generations that were forged quite literally by global catastrophe. And damn near every guy you knew was going off to war, serving to a higher purpose, higher calling than anybody had ever seen before. And so I think that World War I, World War II generation kind of rose to the top in terms of physicality and endurance and mental resilience, physical resilience, because they had to. And because of that, I think arguably a lot of our grandparents or even great-grandparents were not as emotionally open or as emotionally available or even just in tune to their own emotions as maybe the next generation was, our fathers. I feel like our fathers kind of got to see this rough and tough example of their dad and coming home from war and Vietnam and all these things. But then there was like to your reference, the 60s, and there was as much war as was going on, there was a lot of peace and protest or striving for peace. And so it was kind of, I think, this dynamic shift that whether or not they chose to latch on to one or the other, they were given options. There was war and there was peace. There was the ability to choose that I don't think a lot of generations before them had really seen. And so in my experience, my father also served in the Army. And so he brought that home, but then he had his own spin on it. And so then I got to witness his go-getterness. And I got to see, my dad was definitely in that 3%, needed nothing or no one to get a start going, to provide, to be physically and mentally resilient. And so now this generation, I feel like whether you want to look at it through the lens of epigenetics, we know for sure scientifically that does go back about 2 generations what they endured, both in feast or famine, is literally being encoded down into our DNA. And then we get to witness it quite literally with our fathers and grandfathers. So now I think we've been presented with these incredible options and models, role models, mentors, again, should we choose to look at them that way, of I am in the best possible spot I could be for a man because I have examples of what to look at for choosing adversity, for seeing what the physicality levels that I can pursue, I can go after, but also looking at how maybe the generation before, our fathers or other just men above us, kind of chose to carve a different path and chose to maybe learn how to not be as physical and be okay with opening up and listening to their heart and connecting the head and the heart. And I think now a lot of guys more so are struggling because that might be confusing. And I think, for lack of a better term, a lot of guys there's a lot of softness in the masculine world right now. And to no discredit of their own, I think it's just because it's almost like there are too many options. And there aren't enough mentors, aren't enough role models showing them the application. Hey, we have both of these worlds. We, as men, need to choose. We need to get clarity as to when to apply which one. And so I feel like, guys, if you're paying enough attention and you have enough self-awareness, you can really make that choice, because we have the environment, we have the community, we have the culture that is allowing for both. We see, to bring it full circle, we see these groups that are going hardcore and running everybody through the sand on the weekend for $10,000. And we have the other side that's like, no, we're going to sit in a circle and meditate and, talk about our feelings. And, that's totally fine. I'm saying both are totally fine because I've done it. I've been 6 years in LA. Trust me, I've sat in enough rooms and talked about my feelings. I'm going to therapy, but also I kick my ass in the gym and I've done my physical stuff. What's your take on that, man? That was kind of my long-winded way of just this observation of, I choose to believe that masculinity is truly in a great Goldilocks time period right now, but it's almost as if guys don't know how to really choose which one, because I think we don't have the proper role models implementing them for us to kind of bounce this off of. Do you agree, or what's your take on that?
I don't agree. I don't agree entirely. One of the things that I thought about while you were speaking, because you were talking about previous generations, especially our World War generations, whether it be one or two, is, and I'll take a scientific approach based opinion, and then I'll have my personal opinion. But the actual scientific opinion of men changing, and whether it's their emotions or some of these things or whatever, can be directly related to and tied to hormonal decline. And why I say that again is because if you look at the rate at which, we'll use testosterone because that's what the studies are for, the rate at which testosterone declines in men, the numbers are, I think the word astounding is nice to use, because there was a study that I believe came out in 2021, and it paralleled a man's average hormone level, a 20-something in the year 2020, was equivalent to a 67-year-old male's from the year 2000. Okay, so you have a 20-year gap where you have someone who's at a 40-year gap hormonally, 47 years. Then if you follow the math and you go back to 1944, so peak of World War II, you're looking at a completely different human being physically. And so there are quite a few different approaches of continuing with that math into the future, and the physique of the male by and large changes dramatically, from size, stature, weight, even the size of their genitals, everything. Then you have studies that come out of the UK, which came out, I believe, at the end of 2023, that mathematically show the rate of hormonal decline, specifically in fertility, that will have 100% of men incapable of procreating without medical intervention by the year of 2043. So that's 20 years away, less than 20 years away. So 2 decades. It was a United Kingdom study. It was their men. So you have multiple studies coming from different parts of the world that are focusing on the same issues, whether it be fertility or actual testosterone levels, that are all leading in the same direction. So if you want to follow the science, it's going to tell you that men are physiologically different. that also coincides with how specifically here in the United States, how they measure hormonal levels in men, where there's a numerical scale. I know you're familiar with it. You clearly have, you mentioned earlier you did TRT. So there's only one. There's a very basic way to do this. If you're unfamiliar, when you go see your physician and you have blood panels taken, different hormones, all hormones actually, and whatever they're testing have a numerical value that have their place on a certain scale of your age range that says, are you average, are you high, are you low, et cetera. And those numbers, not only do they change depending upon what state you're in or different parts of the world, but they also continue to go down. So meaning what is considered average now is a sliding scale every single year, sometimes every couple of years, where the average number decreases because they're taking the data set is for men the men everywhere. So if male hormone levels are decreasing everywhere, then the average along with it, the average and the median goes down with it. So that then the average amount of whatever hormone you're testing for goes down. So physiologically, we are changing. It's scientifically proven.
And if anybody wants to dive deeper into the science here, I'll share a quick reference. Are you familiar with Dr. Shauna Swan and her book Countdown?
No, not at all.
All right. This is hitting home on exactly what you're talking about. I'll link it down in the show notes for everybody. This book will blow your mind when we're looking at fertility. It's astounding, but it's a whole book around exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and I kind of black out when I start talking about this stuff. So now I got to pull this back into my personal opinion. And my personal opinion about men and having this choice between emotional or more of a physical or suppression. I disagree in a little bit that is kind of the reason being. I think you're using the term Goldilocks, which would mean like basically the right time or this right environment, the best time. And I wouldn't disagree with that, because I believe when things are on a decline, and I don't want to say at their worst, because I just told you 2043 is going to be way worse. When they're at their worst, that creates a great environment for certain individuals to rise up and to do things for good. And if everybody's great and grand, achievements are harder, notable achievements are harder to come by. But when things are tougher, notable achievements are easier to be seen. And I think that for the individuals who are seeking that purpose and seeking that acceptance, maybe that they don't have, because we're really hitting this masculinity type thing, that the environment for those individuals to rise up, do great things, to hold back a lot of the parts of the culture that I think we're missing out on and lacking these days. They can pull those things back in, and the environment in our culture, I believe, is ripe and ready to accept those individuals who are trying to pick up the baton and achieve that task. We share a lot of the same individuals. We know a lot of the same individuals who are attempting to do that. And they've made an entire career out of it in a good way, that that are doing great things. Yeah. So anytime stuff gets real tough, and you mentioned eras where the world was in complete disarray, where poverty was run rampant, where you didn't know where you were getting your next meal from, where you barely got to bathe. You're talking about World War I generations, turn of the century. You're talking about epidemics and disease and all kinds of cultural environments. That what did they do? They bred great human beings to carry the torch and to be great role models that you just spoke about now. So I think now is the time. I just disagree with some of the ways that individuals are trying to achieve that.
Well, I think we both would agree that one of the best ways, arguably, to really see what you can do, to really see, if I put my mind to this thing, where can it take me, and where can I take my body? And once we kind of get that momentum, we get that traction to then give us momentum, I feel like the best gateway for this is the physical work. And if you're a guy listening, watching, and you work out, great. If you go on walks, amazing. If you do yoga, if you do CrossFit, whatever it is, I think, again, especially speaking just to the males here, seeing what we physically are capable of doing. And I don't mean trying to move mountains every day or build a railroad, but just moving some weight around. That could be your body, that could be a barbell, that could be just whatever. But that, I think, is arguably the best, most consistent way for us to at least hold the line in terms of our potential. And it's damn sure another great way to lean into community and to find role models and mentors and to be role models and mentors for other guys, is just to continuously see what the body can do. And seeing what the body can do is probably like what I need to put on my gravestone when I pass. Because, man, like I said, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Virginia, just running through the mountains. I played baseball my entire life, active duty Army for 6 years, suffered career-ending injuries. My audience has heard this story a million times. And I learned how to walk again twice. And so then, even at that point, I was like, no, this can't be it. I've got to see what else I can physically be capable of doing. And I did have to pick things up on my own. And I did have to run, and I did have to find a new community to lean on, because I no longer had my brothers in arms. I, was medically discharged. And so there was this big identity separation for me, stepping away from my mentors and stepping away from that resilient community and needing to make one for myself because I had to, and seeing what the human body is capable of doing. Like, I wouldn't be here talking to you, Dustin, if this wasn't the mindset that was imprinted on me by my father, by the men and women that I served with, but also myself. There's a time and a place that you got to be your own mentor. You got to be your own role model, because you might not have it around. And so I think if we can stick true to that, that is going to be the greatest gateway drug to anything else that we ever could hope for in our life, in our relationships and business. But with that, to kind of bring it full circle, we want to keep doing some same things, right? Because it's what we know, it's what we're comfortable with. But sometimes that doesn't equal the same results. And again, for me personally speaking, when that happens, you can lose motivation. You can get in your own head. It can turn into negative self-talk. It can maybe even distance you away from that community that you've been working so hard to build, because you feel like, I can't keep up. I don't look the same. I can't move the same numbers, yada, yada, yada. And so we look for other ways to help facilitate that. And shout out again, mutual homie, Greg Anderson. He's been a friend for a few years, and I really look, he's several years older than me, which I think is a great place to start for any guy looking for mentor, whether they're in real life or online. It's just who is, just a couple steps ahead of me in terms of life, and he's married with children. He's a few years older. He also is former military. And so I have a lot of commonalities. And, I look to him for what he was doing and how he can maintain this sense of physical self and strength so that he can best show up for everything else in his life. And so I give a lot of credit to him for, discovering you and what you guys are doing now, shifting into BioPro. And, I'm no stranger to supplementation. I'm no stranger to trying different things. And this is what I do and share a lot with my audience. And so when he was kind of sharing with me, hey, there are other ways to go about holding the line, especially once we age, and especially once we get our labs drawn and we see that, oh yeah, the age isn't just how we feel, is actually an internal marker here as well. And needing to move the needle internally as much as I wanted to move it externally, looking into these things called growth factors, and kind of taking my labs and taking my personal feelings, my both quantitative and qualitative set of data, and going, what else can I do here? Because I want to keep up. I want to keep up with these guys in my life. I want to also maybe be an example for other guys in my life, but I also, more importantly, want to be an example to myself. And I know that I can keep doing this. I might just need to change things up a little bit or get a little help. And so growth factors for me, using BioPro for the last 4 months now, has just been incredible. So why would a guy want to maybe consider supplementing with something like this? And how could something like this help kind of hold the line, so to speak?
Yeah. So what BioPro is, it's a non-synthetic alternative, and we focus on growth hormone, but it's a non-synthetic alternative to human growth hormone, which is exactly what you talked about, growth factors. I think it's important for people to understand what growth factors really are. And they're simply the end result of human growth hormone. Human growth hormone is secreted by the pituitary gland. It then, before the body ever uses it, it has to get sent to the liver to be converted into growth factors. Growth factors are just cell signals. They get sent into the blood to trigger cells to do stuff. If you're trying to grow muscle mass, you have to have more muscle cells to do that. So it's a growth factor that triggers the multiplication and differentiation of those cells. As we said earlier, growth hormone decreases every single year after you finish puberty. And so the subsequent growth factors, your cell signals after that are going to decrease along with it. So if you're a guy and you're waking up and you're not feeling like you used to, looking like you used to, which is, I mean, realistically, it's all of us, dude. It's just part of life, and it is what it is.
Yeah,
but you can add these things back in, right? You can fill up the gas tank, right? Instead of feeling like you're running on empty all the time, you can fill in that gas tank. And what we do and what we believe in is I'm not against synthetic treatments. I'm not against them when they're medically necessary. I'm not against I'm not some big, anti guy like that. I just think that there should be different options for different people, and not everybody is ready to hop on the needle just yet. We talked about fertility for 35, 40 minutes, and your fertility can be directly impacted negatively when you start talking about synthetic injections. That is something that a lot of people are concerned about. Some people are not. They've already had their kids. Awesome, cool. But
that's
some people,
why I stopped. I had this personal wellness shift, this personal paradigm shift of TRT worked well for me for the things that I wanted it to do for about 15 months. And then my wife and I really wanted to shift focus into fertility. And I realized that, staying on TRT is not supporting that. So getting off was great for that goal.
Yeah. So, BioPro isn't for everybody, but it is an alternative to individuals who maybe they're in their late 20s and they're starting to feel some of this stuff. Maybe they're looking around and they're like, man, I don't feel like I should feel it. Cause we get, especially overseas, it happens a lot faster in certain parts of the world, like the Middle East and India, et cetera. But these types of things happen a lot earlier. Again, there's a lot of different environmental factors and different things with food, all kinds of stuff. So that's another discussion. But a lot of individuals who are in their late 20s are like, hey, these things are erectile dysfunction. People don't think about it, but 1 out of 3 guys is affected with it, and it's happening younger and younger. And
1 out of 3.
1 out of 3 men are impacted by some sort of sexual dysfunction.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this and you're driving your car and you're at a red light, look to your left and look to your right. If there's 3 dudes in a line, one of you is having an issue. Now, and that could be, man, it's really crazy because a lot of times erectile dysfunction can even be tied. It's something you definitely want to check into because it's actually directly related to, I think 33% of diabetes cases can be directly linked to erectile dysfunction. And anyway, so there it's kind of a, I don't want to get completely sidetracked, but it's almost like a red flag for other types of physiological issues. Anyway, BioPro is great for guys who are like, hey, I don't want to subscribe to the needle just yet. Let me try something else first. And so that's really where we come in. We also, testosterone, it doesn't matter whether it's natural or synthetic. In order for your body to absorb it optimally, you have to have adequate growth factors, specifically IGF-1. So if you're able to add back those growth factors that you might be lacking, you have the ability potentially to increase total testosterone and free testosterone without subscribing to the needle just yet. Or if you're on a treatment already and maybe not seeing the results or feeling the results, that does happen. People do take prescription TRT and it doesn't yield the results that they thought it was. That's no different than any other type of pharmaceutical application or natural product. It's not for everybody. You can potentially, and this is what our physicians have seen by and large, is you can actually increase the efficacy of a synthetic treatment as well. So that's really where BioProPlus comes in. We're not doing anything crazy. We didn't, reinvent the wheel here. We're just giving your body back what it's supposed to have naturally and to improve its optimal function. It's really all that it is.
What I love most about it was how noticeable it was when I went on and then when I went off. And kind of my personal litmus test for, if I change anything in my diet, if I change a workout routine, but especially when I choose to supplement, I try things and try to not change any other variable. I live a pretty regimented life, so that's pretty easy for me. So I try it, and if I feel something, I'll do the cycle, I'll do the dose, I'll do the whatever that is, a week, a month, whatever the item requires, and then I'll go off. And as much as I felt it when I went on, it was about day 10, definitely like week 2. And then I went off of it for a month entirely. It's one of those things you're like, oh yeah, this thing is no longer in my life and I can feel the difference. And it wasn't like I feel like crap, but it's, when you go up to the top of the mountain And you kind of just stay there and you realize, oh, wait a minute, like I climbed up quite a bit. I would like to kind of keep climbing. It was very noticeable for me. And the word virility comes to mind when I think about the best way to describe my experience with BioPro. I never really used that word in life, but it was just,
I haven't heard it in a long time.
Virility, it's just, and I do liken the sensation very much so to my experience when I began to really get that saturation point, probably month 2 with testosterone, having heightened testosterone levels. And it was just, I think any guy will agree, like, when you just feel on, like I felt like a man. I felt strong. I felt capable. I felt like the blood was pumping. I've never really had an issue with libido before, but I can definitely tell you there was a noticeable difference, an increase in libido and virility overall with BioPro. And specifically for me, it really, really helped. And this is, I think, where a lot of guys, it's a small little hole in the boat that if we let it go unchecked, just begins to flood. When you get off your routine, when you travel, when maybe you need to focus more on your relationship, you need to focus more on family, you need to focus more on business. It's kind of this ebb and flow with all these areas of our well-being, right? Sometimes that give to these other areas is longer than you anticipated or hoped for. And that was absolutely the case for me when I went on for the first time, for the first month. I was traveling like crazy through the holidays and New Year. I wasn't getting the same frequency, damn sure wasn't getting the same intensity workouts. My sleep was kind of off because of all the travel and all the other things. I was in every different time zone in the US, you could imagine, for about 4 or 5, 6 weeks actually. And I'm very regimented despite being traveling with my nutrition and sleep as much as possible. And I do feel like the only way I was able to really maintain that level, that sense of virility and body composition for damn sure, I credit a lot to BioPro. And so then after my travels, I come back, I get off of it, I do my thing. And I felt like, oh, I'm back to my baseline. And my baseline isn't bad. I feel good. I can train okay. Motivation is there. But I was like, all right, I'm doing a full month off. I'm going to go back on. And now here I am going into about week 10. And body composition, strength, motivation, sleep, libido, virility, all these things is a very noticeable difference. And I do know that there are a lot of things that, in order for me to feel and look a certain way, require my effort. Nothing is going to do the work for me. Nothing is going to give me the transformation for me. I have to put in the work. But again, as a 38-year-old guy, I'm like, all right, I'm finding some holes, and I think this stuff is plugging it.
Wait till you have kids. Oh man, it's a whole nother variable, and I hate saying I hate and love saying it because I'm a newer father, but it does add a lot of different variables.
No doubt, man.
It'll definitely test your ability to stay on track. That's for sure. But yeah, what you're describing is not uncommon. The 10 to 14 day mark is without a doubt, anecdotally, where people say, hey, this is exactly when, I felt the light switch come on, whether that was sexual function or whether it was energy. But also to what you mentioned, which you didn't tell me before, but about, kind of coming off and feeling kind of like you fell back to baseline. That's very typical as well. I think people, they don't understand or don't realize sometimes even when you start synthetic treatments that it does take time. There's nothing you're going to just take that's going to, in 72 hours, you're going to go from Bruce Banner to the Hulk or, blow through brick walls like the Kool-Aid guy. But it does take time. And a lot of our patients or customers, if you want to call them that, do it for a month and then they're like, oh, okay, cool. I feel all right. And then they come off and then 2 weeks later, they're right back on and they're lifers because they didn't realize how well it was working for them. And then that 2 weeks, they kind of start to slowly go back into how they felt before. Specifically, it's a lot about, oh man, I forgot I didn't feel that pain in my shoulder that I used to have from some old injury that they played football with, or man, I didn't realize how sore I was after workouts. And now I'm back to, they'll hit a heavy leg day or something like that. And then they're like, oh, I feel that again. Because that's really what happened with me. I was lucky enough I actually purchased this company in 2018. I purchased a whole bunch of formulas basically from an existing company that, that's a whole nother podcast.
Mm,
But
yeah.
and BioPro is just the latest evolution in that. But why I say that is because I was just a user like everybody else. So in 2014, I was just a guy who was in my late 20s trying to remain competitive, quote unquote, competitive athlete, though I was not one. But, remain competitive athlete. I worked in professional sports for a little bit in the sports world, I was lucky enough to work out several times a week consistently with professional football players, just trying to, thinking I'm as cool as they are. I am not. And the product really worked for me then.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge moment for me because being a user, then I really believed in it so much that I would implement it into different business ventures that I was in, whether it was in the professional sports world or whether it was in physical gyms that I owned. And watching it work, and this is formulas like we've made the formula. I'll personally say probably 10 times better and actually way more efficacious and usable. But I just saw even those prior formulas that were the basis of what we do now work so well from guys that were, frankly, it was older athletes trying to maintain and hang on to their career in their late 20s, early 30s through one of the gyms that I owned was primarily, I would say more towards the middle age, that 40 to 45-year-old avatar, if you will. And it worked so well for these different populations that I had to have it. And that's, I was just a normal dude like everybody else. And that's why I believe in it so much. And that's why we do what we do. And, it's been a wild ride thus far, just trying to help get this to as many people as we can.
I want to share another quick kind of personal experience with another product you guys have, and that's the sleep product.
Yep.
I'm having a brain cramp right now. The name, remind me.
It's called the Core to Sleep, but I'll give you a little thing, but it's soon to be rebranded, but don't tell anybody, Chase.
All right. Well, everyone knows now when this is coming out, but if not, let me know. We'll have to cut it. But
no, it was a little joke,
Okay, all right. Just I never know. I never know.
I hear you. I get it.
Because we're in the future, right? We're talking now, but this is going to come out later, kind of thing. The sleep product I tried as well, and that. I'm a big qualitative and quantitative guy. I've already said that I think twice in this episode, and I know I know what good feels like, and there's unreal value to know that. So first and foremost, guys, anybody, learn how to pay attention to your body and learn how to know what good feels like. And then on top of that, I track my sleep using a Whoop right here, activity tracker. And I've been using it. I've got almost 5 years of data. And HRV is something that I'm regularly chasing. I'm doing a lot of things to maintain HRV, increase HRV, heart rate variability. It is hands down the number one indicator of our body's physiological capability to shift from parasympathetic to sympathetic, fight or flight to rest and digest. So how good are we at being able to adapt to stress? We're also seeing a lot of really, I think the Harvard study now, the longest human longitudinal study now, like 82, 85 years, look at these indicators of longevity, chronic illness, disease. This one specifically, the Harvard study, they really merit a lot to quality of relationships, which of course is there. But that study and others are really looking at HRV now because we have a lot of data and studies, longitudinal studies looking at HRV. There's a strong correlation at this point still, but a lot there, that people that are living longer and higher quality of life also have higher HRVs. And so the more that we can maintain that, the better. And all the other things that I do to contribute to that, consistent sleep, hydration, working out, recovery. When I took the Core to Sleep, excuse me, I took Core to Sleep, I sent you a screenshot of this. I shit you guys not. The first night I jumped, I think like 10 or 12 points. And over the next couple nights, I think I total increased up to like 20, 25 points in my HRV. And again, a lot of my life is regimented. I introduce few new variables without tracking them to see what's going to move the needle or not. And that really blew my mind. And that, I think, if nothing else, focusing on something or any practices that can enhance our sleep so that we can recover, so that we can get back at it, so that we can be or find the role models, all the things we've been talking about. And hey, boosting our HRV at the same time, not a bad thing.
Yeah, I was a big, you mentioned Whoop. I did Whoop for 1 full year. And I am bringing that up because earlier we talked about things you can do to kind of get on get things moving, if you will. And what Whoop does is it gives you the ability to track. And I'm happy to hear that you're a quantifiable guy. You like specific metrics that you can measure to make sure that things are working. Whoop's great for that. If you haven't measured your sleep, please go do so. I don't wear it anymore. I did it for a year. But I got that exact same data. And I think that's very important because with quarter sleep, what we're trying to do is, I mean, we're trying to help people optimize their hormones, and 70 to 90% of all of your hormone function, especially men, is secreted during sleep, specifically 2 different sleep cycles: slow wave sleep, REM sleep, both of which your Whoop, man, I wish I made money off of Whoop because I mentioned them so many times. It's just like, somebody pay me. But anyway, it's a great device, but it helps you measure those 2 specific sleep cycles very accurately and very quickly. So with that product, we've just been able to really hit that so hard. And I know you're mentioning HRV, which is another thing that is recorded with that device, but we're able to impact those numbers so fast and so hard that, we're able to help you to increase your natural hormone secretion. So before you even ever take BioPro, if you're just having sleep issues, maybe you should just start there, because if you fix your sleep, I mean, that's the closest thing to taking a performance enhancing drug you could possibly do. Sleep is the easiest, fastest, cheapest thing to fix. And it's
So true.
I mean, it is. We use in some marketing material and stuff like that. I think there was studies we quote where 68% of Americans are chronically sleep deprived. They don't even realize it. And here's another thing, even a lesser known fact, is as you age, every decade, the amount of time your body naturally stays asleep and spends in those sleep cycles decreases along with it. So if you pair that with all these other type of lifestyle factors that we've talked about, specifically children and all of these different things, it just continues to go down. So it coincides directly to, I mean, the same thing we've been talking about for an hour: hormonal decline. And that's, a huge part and parcel of why you feel like crap.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it a bunch on the show and on social media, but I'll say it again here. About 5 years ago now, almost 5 years ago, I made the shift to prioritize my personal number one thing in my wellness hierarchy was sleep. And ever since I did that, every other area of my life
100%.
has gotten better.
Yeah.
And I probably could even go back and look at my labs. Dare I even, say that? But I mean, to your point, absolutely. There are a lot of different things we can do in terms of increasing physicality, frequency, intensity, time, type, all, supplements until the cows come home to try to boost hormone health, maintain hormone health. But man, you hit the nail on the head. Start first with sleep. If you can consistently, it's free. Exactly.
It's free. Yeah.
Consistently go to bed at the same time, consistently wake up at the same time. Just start there. I mean, for me, some non-negotiables with sleep are also eye mask, blackout eye mask, game changer. Also, for like the last almost a year now, I've been mouth taping at night. So I'll mouth tape, blackout eye mask.
Terrifying to me.
Literally the next day, one of the most noticeable differences in sleep. I shit you not. Yeah, shout out Elevate
That's
Breath.
real. That's and I'm into we test all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, this is my business, right? We have to figure out what's next and do all these things. And the sleep tape thing is, that's a tough pill for me to swallow because it's.
Oh man, I'll link you up with the brand I love and use called Elevate Breath. Okay. And they're incredible. I'll hook you guys up. It's a great product. And also lately, back in rotation. I used to have one a couple of years ago, but it broke. Now I'm back on with the Chili Pad, or now it's called Sleep Me. The Uller, it's like this mattress topper thing that you can control your temperature. I like it super cold. My wife likes it a little bit warmer. So I'm team sleep all the way. So that plus Core to Sleep. I mean, literally the next day, quantifiable, noticeable difference in my Whoop by seeing the HRV increase. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, Dustin, man, it's been great talking with you. I think we both pleasantly surprised the direction of this conversation.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
I love your openness and willingness to kind of just shed light on what works for you, what doesn't, and kind of your take on modern masculinity right now and what we can do to grab hold of that, to be our own mentors and to create more mentors in the world for other guys. I think that's so necessary right now. So thank you, man.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's, I get to do all kinds of interviews and shows talking about, business and random stuff like that. But to be honest with you, Chase, that the topic that we discussed is actually, I was completely unprepared for it, but it's very important. And I think what I said at the end, I'd like to drive home to anybody listening that is like, hey, I got something out of this show. But, I think that the time is ripe for great individuals to, have their shining moments, whether that's within their own household or, on some show or doing something great with work or business or charity or anything like that. I think the world is asking for you now more than ever. And instead of waiting for somebody else to do it for you, Sometimes all you got to do is just get started, and you'd be surprised where the world will take you.
Just show up. Seriously, just show up. Yeah. So Dustin, my last question, speaking of showing up, that's the whole point of Everforward Radio, so that the listener can take something from a conversation and apply it to their life in a very meaningful, tactical way to help them move forward in life, to keep living a life ever forward, I say. Those two words, man, what does it mean to you to live a life ever forward?
Ever forward, I think to show up first and foremost for those that depend on you and care for you is I believe the man's purpose in this world is for others, not himself. And if you would like to live ever forward and have a purposeful, fulfilling life, is to show up for those that love you and care about you and depend on you first and foremost.
Never a right or wrong answer, man. I just appreciate everybody's interpretation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to have your information and BioPro and Core to Sleep and all the things we talked about. Dr. Shauna Swan's book. And actually, I've got a great Whoop discount for you guys if you want to check it out. You can get the band for free in your first month on the app for free. Just head to join.whoop.com/everforward. But all the things we talked about, linked down in the episode resources for you guys as always. Thank you.